Who's the terrorist? On April 22nd, 140 Peruvian army commandos burst into the Japanese ambassador's residence in Lima, Peru. The soldiers killed 14 members of the Tupac Amaru Revolutionary Movement, or MRTA, and freed 71 hostages who had been held there since late December. One hostage and 2 soldiers were also killed. The Tupac Amaru were demanding the release of about 400 of their members currently held in the world's most cruel prisons in Peru and Bolivia. During and after the crisis, Peru's President Fujimori, parroted by the corporate media pundits up north, referred to the Tupac Amaru as terrorists. We hear that word an awful lot these days. According to my dictionary, a terrorist is one who uses extreme fear as a means of coercion. So, are the Tupac Amaru really terrorists? Did they take the hostages in order to instill extreme fear among some sector of the Peruvian population? Did the Tupac Amaru engage in systematic violence and cruelty to make their point? Did they brutalize or murder any of the hostages? The answer to all of these questions is a resounding no. The Tupac Amaru is not now a terrorist organization. However, there are terrorists in Peru, and they are the government. Peru is, in point of fact, a terrorist state. Why is this never mentioned in the corporate press? According to human rights groups, law organizations, and independent observers, Peru has the worst, most corrupt, and abusive legal system in the world. Now, this is no small accomplishment, the world's worst legal system. Why would any country have a legal system which provides virtually no legal protections or rights for its citizens? In Peru, the legal system is a mechanism of state terrorism. The government of Peru uses extreme fear through the police, army, courts, and prisons as a means of coercing the populace. During the hostage situation, the so-called terrorists were cordial to their captives, and in the long months of negotiations never harmed a single one. Even as the Peruvian army was bursting in and assassinating the rebels, some as they tried to surrender. Every rebel was found with a bullet hole in the forehead, in addition to their other wounds. The Tupac Amaru did not even then harm any of the hostages. Most likely, Fujimori knew that the Tupac Amaru had no terrorist leanings, no intention of killing the hostages, and this allowed him to overwhelm them with violence. The governments of Peru, Japan, and the United States have all said that the situation shows that they are not going to tolerate or negotiate with terrorists. These claims ring all the more hollow as we find out more and more about the brutality and savagery of the Peruvian government, one of the best-funded terrorist organizations in the world. It is a fact of life that even the best-funded terrorist organization in the world cannot keep the people of an entire nation oppressed forever. There are 2 revolutionary armies in Peru. One has a long history of violence against people and the state. That is the Shining Path. The Tupac Amaru has a history of bold thefts, but surprisingly little violence. The Shining Path has always been critical of the Tupac Amaru for this reason, its unreasonable civility in the face of state barbarism. The brutality and poverty which created the Shining Path and the Tupac Amaru remain and are intensifying. The revolutionary forces will continue on in spite of their losses. The Shining Path and Tupac Amaru will grow in spite of the state terrorism because Peru is ripe for revolution. However, what was once the Robin Hood of revolutionary groups, the Tupac Amaru, may, as a result of its direct experience with the real terrorists in Peru, now turn to violence and terror. If Fujimori is comfortable using such obvious terrorism against his people, then the people may decide that they also must use terrorism against Fujimori and his ilk. The chickens of violence and terrorism will come home to roost. The war in Peru is far from over, in spite of what some would have us believe. This is Richard Curtis.